My wife and I bought a log cabin on Lake Norman, just north of Charlotte, back in September of 2022. Our idea was to use this vacation home as a destination for us occasionally, but mostly renting it out as a short-term rental. So there's a lot I can dive into on this topic because I've learned a ton in going through this whole process. But today I want to talk about the pros and cons of doing a short-term rental yourself and what I found in my experience. I'm Dan, and I'm on a mission to help immigrant professionals passively grow their wealth through real estate. If you'd like a copy of my passive real estate investing guide, please click down below in the description. So let's start off with defining what a short-term rental is, because there's really not a very clear definition. In my mind, it's really any place that's rented out for less than 30 days. Now, it can be a single room or it can be an entire home. It really varies depending on what the owner wants to do. And as a matter of fact, Airbnb, which is the largest short-term rental marketplace in the world, got its start by renting out couches. So it's gone a long way, and so has the short-term rental industry. There are approximately 2.3 million short-term rentals in the U.S. alone in terms of listings. And if you compare that to the number of hotel rooms, which is about 5.2 million, that's almost half, which is really just incredible how short-term rentals have grown, and they continue to grow. Short-term rentals have really grown in popularity over the last around 5 or 10 years. Why is that? Well, there's lots of reasons. I mean, imagine if you have a family of 5 and you have a choice between staying in a hotel or staying in a short-term rental. Would you be comfortable cramming into one hotel room, trying to make the best of it? Or wouldn't it be better to just have multiple bedrooms, a lot more room, even have a kitchen where you can kind of cook meals and things like that? That's usually well stocked. That's a huge benefit for a family. Short-term rentals are often more cost-effective than hotels when you look especially for a larger group, so where you could split the bill up amongst many people. So in our case, our cabin, it's very often we have 2 families that come to the cabin and stay, so they can split the cost in half, which really helps, and they get a great property in return. And in my opinion, I think you get a much better experience when you stay in a short-term rental. Just think of this, you could get a short-term rental on the beach or on a lake like ours, or it can be in some prime spot destination, or you could get a short-term rental, say in a condo building full of locals in some foreign country, and you really want to immerse yourself in the culture. I mean, you just can't do that with a hotel. So there's a lot to short-term rentals and what they can do and why they've really grown so much in popularity. So with all this growth, investors are getting into the space. Everyone from individuals like myself to large corporations are all getting into the short-term rental space. And, the pandemic initially was a pretty scary time for short-term rental owners because many listings were just canceled. Bookings were canceled completely. But after some weeks, really, bookings started up again. And we saw this huge demand in 22 and 21, and really people just getting, wanting to be outside, wanting to be separated, wanting to be distanced, for example. This was a great opportunity for short-term rentals. So, but the question is a good one. Is it still a good investment? They're popular, but are they a good investment vehicle? So I'm going to share with you what we've learned through this short-term rental journey. So let's talk about some of the advantages of owning a short-term rental. First, there's potential for great cash flow and returns. Because you're renting a home out on an average of 3 to 7 nights, you're able to charge a whole lot more than you could otherwise if you're renting it out for a year, let's say, as a traditional long-term rental. That means your income can be substantially higher than what you get as a long-term in a 1-year lease, for example. And if you also own the home, you get the benefits of appreciation and other things that are all related to real estate, which is great. I mentioned potential cash flow because you never really know how it will do until you actually start doing it. But if you analyzed it well, made a good decision in purchasing it, you executed a good plan, and you launched it, it should do pretty well. That's the thinking, right? So that's a big advantage. The second advantage is flexibility. The short-term rental strategy is very flexible in both where and when you participate with short-term rental. What I mean by where is you could pick almost any location in the country or the world for that matter. You just need to make sure that the analysis is sound, that there's demand, that it looks like it's a place that could do well. So that's pretty cool. And the other one is when. You can decide when you have this rented out. I mentioned before that the cabin that we got, we're going to spend vacations on it occasionally. And so we get to pick when we do that, and we get to pick when we rent it out. So there's a lot of flexibility in that. A 1-year lease is a 1-year lease. You got to wait a year for the individual to leave the property for you to be able to use it. But with short-term rentals, there's a lot of flexibility built in. The third advantage is the tax benefits. Now, this is a biggie. Short-term rentals provide the same great tax benefits that you get from owning real estate, which includes being able to deduct depreciation from your income. You can also take advantage of strategies like doing a cost segregation study or utilizing bonus depreciation. If you have no idea what I'm talking about, I did create a video that you can click on right here in the corner, and you can watch more of what I'm talking about. One huge tax benefit with short-term rentals is that if you rent on average less than 7 days, then it's considered an active income. It's considered a business, which means you can offset that your depreciation against active income, which is amazing. And this is such a cool idea that I'm going to be creating a video just on this topic. And it's one of the big reasons why I was attracted to doing this in the first place. The fourth big advantage is diversification. I personally like the idea of diversifying my investments outside of stocks. And this is a great way to do it. Even within real estate, the fact that I can have investments in short-term rentals and also apartments is a great way to have different kinds of asset classes, even within real estate, which is pretty cool. Now let's talk about the things you need to be aware of. So the first thing to be aware of is that this is not passive investing, okay? So I would not call even short-term rental investing real estate investing. I think that real estate investing term conjures up, people sending checks every month and it's no big deal, it's pretty hands-off. That's not what this is. I would equate starting a short-term rental to starting a hospitality business, because that's really what it is. You're serving guests that come to stay at the property and giving them a great experience, great service, great furniture, great everything is really very important. The analysis and purchase of a home is the easy part. Then you have to refurbish it potentially, furnish it with a unique design style that'll attract people. You have to have photos taken, you have to market it, put it on marketplaces like Airbnb and Vrbo and others if you want to. You got to find cleaners, you got to find maintenance people that can help you take care of the property when you're running it. Now there are systems you can put in place to make the operation run pretty smoothly. We've done that and it's worked pretty well. We live 6 hours away by car from our property and have no problem at all managing it from where we're at. But the initial setup is not for the faint of heart, so it does take some work to get it set up. The second thing to consider is that the income could be unpredictable. So while the income overall in short-term rentals tends to be much higher than long-term rentals, it can really vary from high season to low season. So in the area that we purchased our cabin, the high season in the summer is very strong. But then in the winter, say January, February, that's the low point. And so the income really drops during those months. So you just need to know you're going to have these ebbs and flows in terms of income that over a year's time will look great. It's not necessarily a drawback. It's just something to be aware of that if you buy a place in a very seasonal market, that's going to happen. The third thing to know is that there will be increased wear and tear on your property. That's just a fact. When you've got groups coming in every few days, over and over again, your property's going to be worn more. Now, hopefully you've got a good handy person or a good maintenance team that can help address issues that come up. For example, I've already had issues that have come up with air conditioner and all kinds of different things. But that's the fact of being a homeowner, and making sure you address those quickly so that you can continue to have a great experience for your guests. And the last thing I want to mention in terms of things to think about is a regulatory risk. Now, because of the increased rise in short-term rentals, it's also meant increasing regulations in many parts of the country. Many cities have enacted local regulations meant to control not just the number of short-term rentals, but also how many nights they can be rented, for example. This could mean that a once profitable short-term rental could become unprofitable very quickly because of these kinds of regulations. Now, you need to look out for this when you look for a property that you're going to purchase if you intend to do this kind of strategy. But even when you do look out for it, there's no telling if the future rules will change in your favor or not. So for my property, for example, I selected a place where vacation rentals have a long history. The community is already pretty familiar with short-term rentals and vacation rentals in general in that area for decades. So the chances of new regulations coming up aren't that high, but it could happen, right? And so these are things that you need to consider when you're looking at a property. So the big question, should you do it? Should you jump into a short-term rental? If you're like many in my audience who are busy professionals with little time outside of work except for spending with family and all that, and really don't want to infringe on that, then I would just say be very careful with doing a short-term rental. As I said before, the work of getting it set up and getting it running is not for the faint of heart. If that's you, then that's okay. There are ways to get involved in real estate that are 100% passive. Things like what I do with apartment investing. And buying a short-term rental and renting it out and running it as a hospitality business is not a passive endeavor. Now, it can turn more passive over time if you've got great systems in place. So it is doable, but the very beginning is the piece that is really the most challenging. Now, I'll say, if you've got the money to do it and the time and the interest, then it could be a great option for you. I have friends who have 5, 10 short-term rentals or more, and they love it. So it's really up to you and what your priorities are in your life, and can you afford to be able to take the time to do something like this. So, did you learn something from this video? Do you have any questions? If so, please like the video and subscribe if you want to hear more tips and education on growing your wealth. Thanks for watching and have a great day.